Welcome. My name is Jen Hale Christie and I work for the mayor. In just a few moments, I'm going to introduce the mayor, but we have a few items before we get started. Tonight, we are also offering live Spanish interpretation, and I want to welcome our Spanish language interpreter, Carlos Nunez, who's going to provide instructions for how to access Spanish interpretation. Carlos?
Thank you very much. Bienvenidos a todo mundo. Les quiero comentar cómo vamos a accesar la interpretación. Depende si tienen una computadora o el teléfono, le van a querer apretar a la pantalla y deberían de localizar un botón que dice Interpretation. Parece que tiene un globo arriba de él. Una vez que le dan clic, van a tener la selección de apretar inglés o español. Si le dan clic en español, van a escuchar mi voz durante toda la presentación. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Carlos. All right. This town hall is being live broadcasted to YouTube and to the mayor's Facebook page. It's also being recorded and will be posted to the city's website. Now, it's my honor to introduce to you our recently elected mayor of Beaverton, Lacey Beatty. Prior to serving as mayor, she served for 6 years on Beaverton City Council. And before that, she was an active volunteer for the city's Visioning Advisory Committee, serving as vice chair. She is the youngest ever elected official and the first woman mayor in Beaverton's history. Mayor Beatty believes in robust community engagement coupled with intentional collaboration across city council, city staff, and community members. And that's why we're all here this evening. Now I will turn it over to Mayor Beatty for her to share about the catalyst for this event.
Thank you, Jen. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. We do have an engaged communities, and for elected officials, that's invigorating and a welcome challenge. Since I've taken office, I've received several comments and questions from our community about what's happening on 5th Street. First, it's when the fencing went up around the fountain, and I can tell you within hours, I was getting emails asking what we were doing. Next, it was the news started to spread about the plan for a senior affordable housing on the site that is currently our community center. I want you to know that your elected officials have heard you. I'm sure you can imagine that projects of this scope are pretty involved and complex. There's a lot that goes into them, and the city staff does community engagement when and how they deem appropriate. But it was clear in this case that we needed to do just a little bit more listening and sharing with our neighbors. So I told staff I wanted to have a town hall. I wanted our community to have a chance to hear from the project managers and to ask them questions about what is being planned. We'll hear from 3 presenters with time for Q&A after each one. I've asked the presenters to be clear about how your input can impact these projects as they're developing. I don't want to give people false hope. I want you to know where those entry points are so that you know how you can make a difference. For public attendees, there are a few different ways to participate in today's town hall. All attendees are automatically muted. To ask your question of the panel, please use the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your screen. Your questions will be read out loud for the panel to answer. If you're unable to type your questions, use the raised hand feature located at the bottom of your screen. The host will temporarily enable your microphone for the duration of the question and your comments. If you are calling into the meeting, you'd like to speak, type or press *9 on your phone to activate the raised hand feature, which will alert the host that you have a question you'd like to ask. The meeting host will temporarily enable your microphone for the duration of the comment. You will need to type *6 to unmute your microphone from your end of your phone. Please note that the questions and comments that are relevant or that were not relevant will not be addressed. We have very limited time tonight. So I want to take a moment to thank our staff. To the staff who have worked many long hours on this project and who have many long hours ahead of them, thank you. To the staff who have worked hard to make this town hall tonight a reality, thank you to you as well. I wanted to start by introducing one of our staff members. Javier Mena is one of our affordable housing project managers and the lead staff on the senior affordable housing project on 5th. He also is a Spanish speaker and has graciously agreed to interpret any questions that come through the Q&A feature in Spanish. I've asked Javier to give a quick overview of something called COVID that you might hear about during our presentation. Javier?
Thank you very much, Mayor Beatty. It's a pleasure being here and pleasure to see the active participation our community has. Definitely want to talk about COVID, which is a different acronym, and it was there before the existing pandemic that we're suffering through. But COVID was structured or created to ensure equitable access of contractors into government actions or contracts. And so the city has, for many of its projects, whether it's through affordable housing or through its own infrastructure, goals to ensure that minority contractors or women-owned contractors are able to participate and benefit from the investments that are being made by the public. And so that's what the biggest point in terms of COVID is to ensure that there's equity and inclusion in contractors in investments that the city and the government are making.
Thank you, Javier. All right, let's just jump right in. Our first presentation is from the Fountain Project in City Park. Aaron Lee is a project manager in our Public Works Department, and he is the construction and project manager on this project. I've asked him to share a bit about what we can expect there. Aaron?
Thank you, Mayor Beatty. I appreciate the opportunity to be a small part of this town hall tonight. I'd like to take this time to share some information and provide some updates on where we are with the library fountain improvement project. First, let me share some details about the fountain and the construction work being performed. The existing library fountain was constructed in the year 2000 at a cost of approximately $1 million. Historically, the fountain welcomes 55,000 visitors per year and hosts approximately 10 to 15 unique events. Ground broke for our new fountain in January of this year. Cost for the construction of the fountain improvements is approximately $3 million. Construction efforts are scheduled to continue with completion of the improvements set for late summer of this year, 2021. We're building an all-new fountain splash pad with customizable jets, lights, and sound elements. The new fountain will be programmable and have new connectivity features that we are all excited to explore once the fountain is up and running. A new pump house is being constructed as a part of this project. This new pump house will serve as space for the fountain controls as well as any maintenance equipment that is necessary for operation. The new pump house will contain all updated equipment in addition to housing items previously located in a very deep on-site vault that required confined space entry. This project looks to further enhance one of Beaverton's iconic sites and will set the stage for a premier gathering space and attraction for our community. The fountain enhancements further encourage a downtown experience and will allow for participation in downtown businesses and activities. We really want the fountain to be a part of the encouragement to visit our downtown. When you visit the new fountain, we're confident that you'll not just visit the fountain, but also choose to participate in all the offerings downtown Beaverton provides. The city of Beaverton is also very excited to have Fulcrum Construction as our prime contractor for these construction efforts. Fulcrum Construction is a co-bid certification office for business inclusion firm and has an office just blocks away from the fountain site. Several Fulcrum employees, including the owner, Israel, have homes in the immediate fountain neighborhood. This has allowed for very personal ownership in the success of the work being performed. Again, we're really excited to have Fulcrum as one of the main leaders in the library fountain project improvements. So what can our residents expect next on this project? Currently, construction efforts are being focused on the new utilities required on site, as well as the new above ground pump house foundation. Some of the concrete work relative to structural foundations is planned to be poured, weather permitting. Fencing around the project site will be maintained and should remain for the duration of these construction efforts. At this time, I'm hoping to provide some additional information to anyone with questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. We now have some time for questions. So do we have our first question?
We do, Mayor Beatty. Aaron, we had a question come in online prior to the event. So here we go. Why was it decided to route a large trench and conduit through the middle of the historic Ponderosa Pine Grove? Shouldn't it have gone around the grove, avoiding severing of roots and compaction of soil from machinery, which harms the trees?
Thank you, Shannon. It's a very good question. We have a very, very comprehensive city team comprised of people that includes our city arborist, Jared Lane. Jared and his group from our city operations have been involved even prior to us breaking ground at the fountain site. And Jared has been working with Fulcrum and all of their subcontractors specifically on the utility routing as it relates to the trees, protecting the existing trees, their root structures, and everything that Jared looks out for. I know that our fountain team's been able to avoid damaging any trees as a result of this teamwork up until this point, and I'm confident that that's going to continue. Us being in communication, having the right people on the team.
We just had a second live question come in is, will the farmer's market still operate from that area?
Another good question. Thank you. We have a public outreach team who's definitely been a huge part of this fountain construction effort. Stacey Rivet, she's a big part of that team, and she's been in contact again prior to breaking any ground with Ginger from our farmers market. And we've been successfully able to have Ginger continue to host her events. And we've been able to work with Fulcrum Construction. They've been able to work around and provide power and the water and things that Ginger has needed historically and needs to be successful in what she's been able to do. Great question.
And the last question we have coming in is the new project environmentally friendly?
Yes, part of, I believe so. One of the main highlights of the fountain is that it's going to recycle all the water. And I think that kind of speaks for itself as far as being environmentally friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for your presentation tonight. And for those watching, we consider on the City Council our fountain the crown jewel of downtown Beaverton. And when we knew it was in disarray and potentially causing safety issues, the council worked really hard to fund the project for reconstruction. We know it's one of the free community gathering places that involve a splash pad in this part of town. And we know our community members look forward to it. I know that my toddler really does like it. And so I do know not having it operational this summer is quite a bummer, but our staff is working really hard to get it going as fast as humanly possible because we know what it means to our community to have it here. Thank you for joining us tonight, Aaron. And if there's other questions, you could always send them in through the chat. We're happy to answer them via email as well. Okay, thank you, Aaron. Our next presentation tonight is about the Book Corner project. Glenn Friedman is the Beaverton City Library Director and is responsible for coordinating the library's portion of the Book Corner project. Sarah King is a Senior Development Project Manager in the city's Community Development Department. Sarah is responsible for managing the potential mixed-use project on the Book Corner site. Sarah and Glenn will now share their presentation with you. Go ahead, Sarah. Glenn.
Thank you and good evening. Well, I'm going to talk about the proposed Book Corner site multifamily project. This is a project, next slide, please. This is a project on the Book Corner site, potentially, as well as the site that is adjacent and to the east of it. On the slide here, you'll see the Book Corner site highlighted in yellow, and around the red line is the consolidated site, which, if it moves forward, would contain the new multifamily project. The Book Corner is located just south of Beaverton City Park at the corner of Southwest 5th Street and Southwest Washington. It is owned by the city of Beaverton. It houses the Book Corner used bookstore, and it is zoned for high density mixed use development. Next slide, please. The development proposal, as I stated, combines two adjacent sites for redevelopment. It would include 31 rental and between 1 and 3 commercial or live work units. The developer would purchase the Book Corner site at market value. The city would require the developer to provide affordable housing units via a write-down or what's known as a subsidy. And most importantly, this is not a done deal yet. Negotiations with the development team are pending. Once negotiations have been finalized, we will go to the city council for approval. But because our negotiations have not been finalized, this has not gone before the city council, and the city council has not taken any action. Glenn.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. So as Sarah mentioned, this project, if approved by City Council, would result in the Book Corner, the Friends physical retail operation and processing functions being incorporated into the main library. The remodeling costs to do so would be covered as a result of the proceeds from the sale of the Book Corner property. And some preliminary design and cost estimates have been done as part of a feasibility study, year-long feasibility study, which was completed in September of last year. Next slide, please. This slide talks about some of the public benefits, and one of the biggest ones is from the library's perspective is that in bringing, incorporating the Friends physical retail operation and processing functions into the main library would increase the visibility for that physical retail sales. There would be a component in the lobby of the main library as well as on the first floor. And so when you compare the foot traffic, for example, to the main library compared to the Book Corner, it'd be a significant increase in visibility and foot traffic to the Friends retail site once incorporated into the library. And I'd like to turn it back to Sarah for the rest of the public benefits.
Thanks, Glenn. Well, the project will expand housing choices near transit and amenities. This particular project proposed would be right along a high frequency bus line. The project will provide 4 affordable units for a minimum of 10 years. It will provide ground floor activity and a mix of uses because there are the live work units on the ground floor. And it will comply with the city's diversity and equity contracting good faith effort that Javier highlighted at the beginning of the evening. Next slide, please. I'm going to show you a couple of conceptual illustrations. This is the front of the building. It is, imagine you're looking from City Park across 5th Street. You'll see the front of the building here. It's proposed to be a 4-story building with some ground floor retail. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. Let's go to the next one. Here's another highlight or another close-up of the front of the building. And what I like about this building is there are balconies, and on the ground floor, you can see there are patio spaces. Next slide, please. And the last illustration shows the back of the building, which faces south. And this also illustrates the relationship of the parking. For example, well, the building here will be up along 5th Street. The parking will be in back, some of it tucked under the building, some of it in a surface parking lot behind the building, and then there'll be a landscape buffer after that. So there's quite a bit of different of space between this building and the buildings to the south of it. Thank you.
Right. Well, that wrapped up the presentation on this project. I know we've received some early questions. Shannon?
Yeah, we've got 2 questions that came in early. What parts of the Book Corner are not going to go into the library? I know they have an Amazon operation.
Thank you for the question, Shannon. So in doing the conducting the feasibility study, which I mentioned a few moments ago, it resulted in us determining that it was not possible to incorporate the entirety of the Friends retail operation into the main library without undertaking a multi-million-dollar expansion of the main library facility. And that included the Friends online sales operation, which you referenced by the Amazon sales, as well as a space for their manager. So to address that, the city is committed to working with the Friends to identify commercially available space for lease to house their online sales and operation, as well as space for their managers' offices and so forth.
We had a second online question come in early, and Sarah, I think this is directed at you. If this project moves forward, is there going to be any effort to save the mature trees on site, especially on the corner? With the Book Corner project, there will be a huge loss in our urban forest and will be a huge negative to the neighborhood. What are the options for building on site and preserving the trees?
Great question, thank you. There are 10 trees on that site now, most of them evergreen. According to our city arborist, they range from fair to average condition. Because of the size of the building, because of the various development requirements that go along with new construction, such as parking requirements, stormwater detention requirements, and landscaping requirements, unfortunately, it does not appear to be possible to save the existing trees that are on the site. However, the new development will include approximately 16 new trees planted on the site. Many of them will be along 5th Street, but others will be in the back of the building and on the sides of the building as well.
And we had quite a few questions come into the Q&A, so we'll do our best to get through them. So the first question is, since the fountain area is the crown jewel of Beaverton, why would you build on the Book Corner lot, suffocating the area and blocking needed open space? Why not consider repurposing the architecture on the lot for a cafe or something patrons of the fountain, the library, farmers market can use, and still have the trees and grass and much needed elbow room in that location?
Sure, I can take that. Well, the community vision that was conducted for Beaverton strongly highlighted a need and a desire for higher density housing options in downtown Beaverton, particularly new housing options along transit lines. And as I stated, this is along the bus 76 line. That's a high frequency line. So this is in that regard, this is an underutilized site that we see an opportunity to provide the kind of housing that the community has told us that they want to see.
Are residents not only losing community meeting space at the community building, but also in the library?
I'm sorry, Shannon, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so are residents not only losing community meeting space at the community building with the project C that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but also in the library with the movement of the Book Corner into the library?
I see. So the question seems to be in incorporating the physical retail operation of the Friends into the library, if approved by the council, would we be losing community meeting space in the process? The answer to that question is no, because none of the proposed spaces designated for the Friends retail operation are currently used for community meeting spaces.
So the new property is lovely. Across the street on the corner of 5th and Washington is a home running a year-long yard sale. Does the city have that property on the radar for development, or is there a plan to clean up that corner?
To my knowledge, we don't have any plans to do any redevelopment on that site. With regards to cleaning up that corner, I can't respond. I don't know.
I'm doing my best to scroll and find.
Yeah, let me take that's private property. So the city doesn't go out and absorb private property and force them to do things. So we are not in the capacity to look at their space for redevelopment unless they approached us to do so.
Offering only 4 affordable units of the 31 for only 10 years sounds a little bit like selling public land to developer for profit. What are the hurdles to obtaining more affordable units or something else that would have a greater impact on the community?
I'm going to take that, and I might look to Javier in our housing department to help out answer that question. I think there's a variety of community benefits that we're receiving. One is the affordable units. The other is the COVID requirement. And it's what we felt with only 31 units, we felt providing 4 units was was adequate. They would be at various affordability levels as well. Javier, would you like to add on to that?
Certainly, there's definitely a tremendous gap in affordable rental housing at the city. So beyond working with the Metro Affordable Housing Bond and creating fully affordable apartment complexes, we're also working with private developers to see how can we partner and have a mixed income project, and definitely that requires resources. And at the same time, we want to make sure that it is a project that's suitable and for the restricted units as well as the residents overall. And so that's how the 4 units came about. It requires resources, the limited resources that we have, as well as ensuring a community that is sustainable and successful.
Glenn, I think this question is directed at you. What are the spaces in the library that will be repurposed for commercial operations currently used for?
Okay, let's start off with the space in the lobby. Those of you familiar, there is a cutout space currently occupied by a whale sculpture, who, by the way, is wearing a face covering. And so that space has been designated one of the areas for expansion of the Friends retail operation. As I mentioned previously, it has great visibility both from the outside as well as the inside. That's prime retail retail space. And then on the inside, those of you who may be familiar with the existing Friends bookshelf on the first floor, when you first walk into the library, you go left, there's a copier, etc. And then the Friends have a bookshelf that's designated for sales. We're going to be expanding that by about 4 or 5 shelving units. And that space is currently occupied. It's an underutilized space, which is currently utilized. We have handouts and pamphlets and things of that nature, but it's horrifically underutilized. So this would be a great way to repurpose this space for a much better use. And then in the back of the house, we've identified space for shared processing space, as well as compact shelving to accommodate some additional storage of their excess storage of their inventory.
Those are all the questions we've got for right now.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, our final presentation tonight is about the Senior Affordable Housing Project, which was formerly referred to as Project C. Our city lead on this project is Cadence Petros. Cadence is the Development Division Manager and Supervisor for the projects related to the Metro Affordable Housing Bond and Downtown Development projects. I've asked 2 other people to join us for this portion in case there are questions they can answer. Scott Keller is the Senior Project Manager in the City Services and Engagement Department, and he oversees the city's Community Garden program. And Holly Thompson, who is joining us from Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District, she's standing by in case any questions come up that she might be able to address from the park's perspective. Cadence, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. As she mentioned, my name is Cadence Petros, and I'm happy to be here this evening to talk with you. And I need to do a quick apology in advance. I'm suffering from some seasonal allergies, so if I mute suddenly, it's probably to do an undignified sneeze. Next slide, please. The Metro Affordable Housing Bond was approved by regional voters in November 2018, and in that effort, we were allocated approximately $31.1 million to develop a minimum of 218 units. That translates to 4 projects, and you'd think that $31 million could get a lot more than 4 buildings, but it's very expensive to develop affordable housing and housing in general. So when we were thinking about how we were going to do that work, how are we going to be able to deliver on our obligation to provide those apartment homes to our residents, we were very concerned about not having enough money to do so. And so we were trying to be quick in delivery, because the longer it takes to develop it, the more expensive it gets, and we are not allocated additional funding. And we wanted to make sure that we could leverage our resources as much as possible. And so that meant looking at city-owned property, and then other publicly owned property that might be suitable for affordable housing development. And so our 4 projects are the Mary Ann, which is in downtown Beaverton, adjacent to Beaverton High School. The South Cooper Mountain project, it's called the Wish Camper project, and that's across the street from Mountainside High School. And the El Monica project, which will be across the street from the El Monica Max station. And then finally, the 4th project is the Senior Affordable Housing Project. And that current location is slated for the Beaverton Community Center location. So we used to call it Project C because we anticipated that that was going to be the 3rd project in our queue, although it's turning out to be the 4th. It is slated to be the most deeply affordable project. As you saw on the previous slide, we have to deliver on at least 89 deeply affordable units. And for a household of 4, that means that they earn $27,000 a year. So it's for folks who are working hard or are on fixed incomes. We heard from a whole bunch of residents when we were developing our local implementation strategy, asking them what did they want to see, how would they want these units to be delivered, who should we be serving first, right? We know that there is so much need. 47% of our renters in Beaverton are cost burdened, and there's more need than we are currently able to meet. And what we heard over and over again is that we would ensure access to affordable housing for our seniors. We've heard that seniors are even more stricken now in the pandemic. We all know seniors who are more isolated, but they're also struggling because of the extra burden that COVID has placed on them. When the pandemic hit, we heard from Meals on Wheels that there was a 400% increase in their call volume. And so we've been listening to the residents and our advocates and understanding that we need to have this deeply affordable housing project serve seniors. And this location is particularly good for seniors because of its proximity to Elsie Store, its proximity to the library, the park, transit. There are so many opportunities, and we're very excited to be able to provide a safe and secure home for our residents in need. And we didn't just decide one day that the Beaverton Community Center was the right spot. We did an evaluation of the city-owned properties and tried to see how we could make as many of them potentially work, and then figure out which one worked best. And many of the other sites were not as beneficial, either because their zoning didn't allow the density we needed, they were inappropriately zoned, or they lacked the access to amenities or transit. Next slide, please. So we know that it's not without cost to use the Beaverton Community Center site. There is a building on there. It was originally built 30 years ago and modified 20 years ago. It has been underutilized. When people hear community center, they think vibrant programming, and even pre-pandemic, that was not really the case. We have, however, got some important uses on site, including the Beaverton Severe Weather Shelter. This is a critical service that the city offers to our residents, and the City Council and the Mayor are absolutely committed to ensuring that that service remains. It, however, will not remain at that location. And so we are currently engaged in conversations with the team in the Community Services and Engagement Division to talk with them about relocating those critical services to another part of the city. But it takes time to develop a property, and so there's not a mad rush to relocate. And so the Severe Weather Shelter will remain operational at its current location through winter 21-22. In addition to the Severe Weather Shelter, there's also room reservations, at least pre-COVID. And those, well, we honestly don't know if community meeting room space will be allowed in the redeveloped property, because the city council and staff and the to be determined developer will be in long conversations with the community and each other as we try and figure out what is the appropriate ground floor use of that new affordable housing project. It could be simply lobby space for the affordable housing project with meeting room space for the residents, but it's more likely that it will be publicly available space. Council hasn't made a final decision on that. We're not even close to that. And so we're very interested in getting feedback from residents about what they think would be an appropriate use on that ground floor plane. And then finally, there's the community gardens. And it is a loss to have them no longer at that site. And given the footprint of that property, it will be impossible to retain the community gardens at that location. But there's a good news story to that. The first is a great portion, of those community garden beds are raised beds. And so the beds and the soil they contain can be relocated to other locations. And we are currently in conversations with THPRD about how we can get more efficient together as jurisdictions in the provision of community garden space. Currently, the city of Beaverton has a small program, and THPRD has a much more robust program. And so we are in preliminary conversations with THPRD to see what partnership opportunities are available, both to relocate the above ground spaces and then also see what possibilities lie in augmenting services within city limits. And so no final decisions have been made, but we're really excited about the collaborative nature of our partnership with THPRD and look forward to more discussions with them and with the community about that. And so how can you be involved? Obviously, if you want to know more about the projects as they unfold, we will provide project updates, but we also want to solicit we want to hear from you, not just talk at you. And so we will be having more conversations about ground floor use and the services offered within the affordable housing development as the project continues. We are hoping to begin the solicitation process for a development team in the next month or so. And so things will start to happen, but no concrete actions will be taken on the actual construction of the project for quite some time. And then we would also really appreciate more dedicated feedback in the form of participation on the Housing Technical Advisory Group. This really critical group advises staff on a whole host of affordable housing issues, including every single Metro Affordable Housing Bond that we do. And recruitment takes place in September, and I think we have at least 3 positions that will be coming available at that time. So if you have a burning passion for affordable housing, we would love to hear from you when we do that fall recruitment. I guess, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cadence, for that presentation. I know, Shannon, I'm seeing questions pop on this. Do you want to take over now?
Yeah, I think we're gonna do our best to get through the ones that were submitted early, since that was our promise. So Cadence, Beaverton's climate action plan talks about reducing the use of single occupancy vehicles and adding capacity for those seems to run contrary to that goal. What are the parking minimums for projects like this in central Beaverton? And would the city consider waiving them altogether?
That's a really interesting question because there's a push-pull. So the first part is a requirement is 0.75 parking spaces per unit. There are potential variances to that requirement depending on the population served. So for example, for affordable housing. The flip of that is there are also residents and others who are concerned about not having enough parking in apartment complexes. And so our job as the city is to weigh those things. How do we encourage the least amount of parking that is absolutely needed and provide enough parking so that we can ensure that there's adequate parking available for the residents. In this specific case, it's deeply affordable senior housing. And so the actual parking demand for this project will probably be lower than some other projects.
How does removing a 20-year-old building in relatively good condition fit into the new climate action plan?
Yeah, well, right, there's always opportunity cost. And I guess I just like to take a minute to talk about the fundamental point of urban redevelopment, right? We do this, right? We try to create density in the urban core, not just for vibrancy, but which we love, right? That's exciting to have restaurants and shops that you can go see and to be able to walk in your neighborhood downtown. But really, there's a fundamental environmental point to it, which is if you concentrate people and jobs and amenities in the central core, the more that you can do that, the less you have to expand into undeveloped property at our edges. And the less distance that you have to drive in order to get to those amenities. And so that's a fundamental underlying concept behind this work. And so I personally believe it's in line with the community action plan to increase density. Yes, we'll be demolishing a one-story building that was built 30 years ago and remodeled 20 years ago. But what we're replacing it with is 70 homes for struggling seniors. And so I think on balance, that's a pretty solid trade-off.
A number of questions came in regarding the location. In particular, people are wondering, have there been any other sites considered for this project? Can the city use a vacant lot already owned by the city or Bureau? Is this really the best location when there are no grocery stores within walking? And then why wasn't there a better and greater outreach on the selection of this site?
Ooh, okay. I'll try to do all of that. Yes, we looked at several other locations. First of all, we don't own a ton of sites. And as the mayor said, we can't just snatch them when we want to, right? We have to buy them from willing sellers, particularly if we're doing it for private redevelopment, which affordable housing would be. So we looked at the portfolio of sites that we had. And quite frankly, every single one of them that could have any housing on it, we'll probably be talking to council about whether they're suitable or not. What we have to do is figure out for this specific project, this most deeply affordable project, is this the best, what's the best location for that? And we talked to council about that a couple times. And their estimation and our estimation is, yes, this is the best location. It's close to amenities and Natural Grocers is close. Winco is a little bit further. Fred Meyer, New Seasons, there are a lot of opportunities, but it's not just grocery, right? LC Store is very important to seniors and they offer Meals on Wheels there as well. And they have a van that can get folks there. And the library is directly across the street, as is the city park. And so the combination of all of the amenities, including the bus lines, is really an important factor in locating the senior affordable housing project.
This project,
did I get all of it?
I think so.
Let me add on to that a little bit for cadence here. So we have looked at the downtown zoning. One of the things that I've been the most concerned about that I ask constantly is about our grocery store deserts that we're creating. We know this is a problem. So when we updated our code, we really put in there for the ability to have smaller like bodegas like you would see in a different city, the ability to go and get those like eggs and milk and those kind of immediate needs for everyone living there. This is something we've actually talked quite a bit about for the last 2 years because we realize as we want people to move into a district and be less reliant on cars, we have to bring all the other amenities with them. So we've been pushing really hard in our code, which is the first thing that the elected officials can control, is changing the code to allow services like that to operate, which we did. And now when we're working towards redevelopment of buildings, we're pushing developers to include on the bottom floor retail, the ability to have those kind of resources available. So it won't be your full-fledged grocery store. There's not going to be a WinCo dropped into Central Beaverton, but we are pushing to get that corner bodega so you could get those everyday items when you run out and not have to commute across town to get some of them.
I'm gonna try to take some heat off of Caden so we can talk about the gardens. This project will be destroying an established and beloved community garden. Our community gardens have wait lists for entry and are very valuable to the surrounding communities. What will be done to replace and rehome the community garden and its gardeners?
I'll start, Shannon, and then I'll phone some friends. Thank you, Holly. City Council and the Mayor are committed to community gardens in our city. We know they're important, and we are very excited at our opportunities to partner with THPRD. We want to be efficient and effective. That's just plain good governance, and so we are in initial conversations with Holly, and I guess I'll just turn that over to her so she can augment my statement.
Yeah, I want to thank Mayor Beatty, the City Council and staff, particularly Cadence, for inviting us to be here today and to talk about community gardens. It's early, but we definitely know that they're super important to the community at large. It was one of the very first things the City of Beaverton did was call us up and say, we've got to start talking. So your staff and your electeds are definitely advocating for the community, for those community gardens. And we're really excited to try to figure out how we can work together. THPRD has 15 community gardens throughout the district. We've got a pretty robust program. It's run a little differently, but we do have property. So, you know, there's costs, there's things to be figured out, but we are definitely at the table. As Cadence said, and we've heard from some of the gardeners, the soil is really important. So we understand the aspects of how special gardeners who've been at their plots for a long time feel about those sites. And we're really excited to do what we can to support Beaverton's vision for its downtown. And, you know, on the aspect of the senior affordable housing, I just want to say that's something that our board of directors has worked on a lot over the last couple of years. And we are very much excited to partner with the city. We too see how the importance of affordable housing, particularly for our 55 and better and community, and are really excited to partner with the city on the opportunities to streamline services from the STIR Center for folks that will be calling this area home. So we're all in, it's preliminary, but we're all in to do what we can to help.
I think we've probably got time for this last question, and Mayor Beatty, I think this is directed at you. If the majority of the city opposes this location, will you choose another site?
Well, I think one, we'd have to talk about what the majority of the city would look like to do that. You know, we are talking about lots of different things. So writing into city council is an important first step. But what I think is really hard sometimes for, you know, there's a couple comments in the chat of like, why doesn't the city just go buy other property? Because you have like lots of money. COVID has hit cities and counties really, really hard. There's not as much money as people think there are in our general operating fund to just go out and purchase. And when cities have to go out and purchase land, we pay an extreme premium. We often pay 10 to 20, 30% over asking or value, because when you're negotiating with a municipality, people push us a lot harder. And so our ability to do that is actually really limited. We do a lot of it in the downtown core because of our urban redevelopment district that has generated some revenue for us to do it. But when we spend out of our general fund to do that, it means other services pay a price. So it's not as easy as I think one would think that we could just go and purchase land and snap it up as we need to do it. So I just want to make sure people know that. And I think too, it's the reason why people don't want us to build there. We have to take that into account as well. You know, I was just meeting with middle schoolers today talking about bottle drop recycling facility and the public need versus the housing around it, and the decisions that elected officials have to make all the time about who do we make happy in our decision making. Central Beaverton is getting a fresh new look through a diversity project to look at how we're developing, how we're building around our core, how are we making sure that community members aren't displaced. So there's lots of time to be talking to us. This is the first project of likely a lot more coming into Central Beaverton. So making sure you're paying attention when we start talking about these projects. And I'll be honest, the city hasn't done the best job of outreach for some of these projects. We're riding a ship now. We're starting with this first town hall. We're going to commit to doing more of these so people can hear earlier in the process to have greater input into what we're doing as long as the city goes. We haven't talked about all of these 3 projects together. This whole corner is going to have a massive new look in a couple of years from now. So I know that not everyone's question was being able to be answered tonight. You can always email me at mayormail@beavertonoregon.gov. We're going to answer as many questions as we can through that feature. And I know that we'll be updating our frequently asked questions page based on the questions we've asked tonight. So if your question didn't get answered, circle back to that FAQ page in the next few weeks to get some of those answers. And there are continuing opportunities for input. You'll find those on the 5th Street Project webpage, which is linked in the chat. And as a reminder, this webinar has been recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again later. I want to thank all the panelists for sharing your time and expertise with us. And I think that's the end of our presentation. I'm reading the chat from the staff that are coming through, and it looks like we have maybe a couple more questions, but I think that we're running out of time, and I promise to get staff out the door. So the other things that you can participate in is your neighborhood, your NACs, your neighborhood associations. They're able to answer some of these questions as well. We're happy to come out and do presentations for neighborhoods along the way. I want to thank you for participating with us tonight. Please continue to email your questions in. On behalf of the City Council and the staff at the City of Beaverton, thank you for turning in tonight.